David Kaye was the chief U.S. weapons inspector in the lead up to the Iraq war. He joins us by Skype from Bethany Beach in the U.S. state of Delaware. Thanks for being with us. First, I'm sure you heard the news out of Moscow there with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov saying, that if it would help convince the United States not to attack Syria, that he would put pressure on the Assad regime to hand over its chemical weapons stockpile and put it under world supervision. First of all, let's talk about the logistics of something like that. Is that even doable?
Well, the devil really is in the details of how you would do it. Syria has, at the beginning of the conflict, we thought maybe 5 major stockpiles. It appears they've moved others of their chemical weapons. So you're maybe talking as many as a dozen different sites in a region that's under conflict, and you want to guarantee that they're under international control. Are you going to require, and I think it's probably likely, armed inspectors, or at least inspectors accompanied by armed personnel to assure their security? And how long are they to do it? It can be done, but it is a very difficult undertaking.
All right, and we're hearing from the United States as well, that from at least one U.S. official, that this isn't something that the United States would be taking seriously. What about this reported chemical attack on August 21st? There are weapons experts who say essentially only the regime, because it takes a certain level of know-how, it takes the weapons to deliver these chemical agents, that only the regime would be able to carry out this type of attack, not the rebels. Do you agree?
I think the evidence that we've seen, and I have to emphasize it's what we've seen, and I much prefer waiting for the inspectors' reports, but the evidence is of a high-quality sarin gas, not something likely to be brewed up in a garage, multiple attacks, not a single attack, but multiple locations in a relatively short time frame with large amounts of the agent. That speaks of the sophistication and the tools only available to governments.
Right. But do you think that the evidence at this point is enough to go to war over?
Oh, that's a far different question. And quite frankly, not one that I have the right to answer. That's a political question based on what you think it will accomplish. I think if you look at the polling evidence in the United States, most Americans don't doubt that there was a chemical attack. What they're very hesitant to say is whether they're willing to support something that they really don't know the consequences of.
Now, you were the chief U.S. weapons inspector in the lead up to the Iraq war. And Iraq is probably one of the biggest reasons why Americans are so unwilling to have any kind of appetite for foreign intervention in the Middle East. Some people are comparing Iraq to Syria. They're saying this sounds a lot like some of the trumped-up intelligence that was fed to us to justify the invasion. Do you think there are any similarities between the two situations here?
I don't think there are many similarities. There certainly is a shadowing effect of Iraq as well as Afghanistan on American public attitudes. But look, this time you've had 100,000 deaths from conventional means. No one really disputes 1,000 or so deaths from this latest chemical attack. And even the Syrians admit they have large amounts of chemical weapons. So it really is quite different. What remains to be seen, and I would emphasize this, is you've got to understand not just the weapons or whether an attack took place, but what are the consequences if you cross that boundary and take a country to war?
Right. And the other question would be, I suppose, if there is no intervention, would it send the message to the Assad regime, if indeed they are behind this, and many people believe that they are, that it's okay, that the next attack could not cause the death of a little more than 1,000 people, but 10, 20,000 people? Do you think it's sending that message if nothing happens?
I think that is possible that they will, and that's why, there's a range of consequences between no action and a military attack that could be taken by the international community. And it really depends on how that handles. With regard to message sending, the argument made, we've got to do this because otherwise the Iranians will be emboldened to go ahead with their nuclear program. I don't put much weight behind that because I've looked at the Iranian nuclear program for now well over a decade. Iranians are not stupid. They understand the consequences of an attack on Israel or the further development of their nuclear program, and they understand that's a far different circumstance. So I worry when you say the immediate consequences will be X, Y, and Z. It's not necessarily true.
All right, David Kaye, thanks very much. The former chief UN's weapons inspector in the lead up to the Iraq war that is still playing such a big role in how America approaches all these conflicts in the Middle East. Thanks very much for joining us.